It's 7:30 on a Monday morning, and in a studio in Broadcasting House in London sits a 66-year-old Irishman preparing to start a 2-hour breakfast show with his cohort of underlings. His best friend and producer, Paul Walters, and the bunch of degenerate newsreaders that daily infest the show. John Two-Sheds Marsh, Alan Voice of the Balls Dedicope, and Fran Anybody's Godfrey. The Irishman in question is Terry Wogan. BBC Radio 2. But the man that now presents the most popular radio show in Europe hasn't always spent his life behind the microphone. This is a short look into the life of the lower middle class grocer's son from Limerick turned broadcasting legend. Your man was born Michael Terence Wogan on the 3rd of August 1938 to Michael and Rose Wogan in Mother Cleary's nursing home, Elm Park, Limerick. Terry's first brush with education was with the Salesian nuns in Limerick, and after 10 minutes had decided that was enough of school and had walked out the front gates and home. He was persuaded to go back and in the fullness of time moved to study under the Jesuit brothers at Crescent College, Limerick. When Terry was 15, his father was offered the position of General Manager with Leverett & Fry, Grafton Street, Dublin, and upon arrival he continued his education under the Jesuits at Belvedere College. After taking his exams for the Leaving Certificate, he fell very ill and missed the time for university entry and even applications for the trades or a job. The Jesuits had the answer: "Send the aged back to us." And so Terry returned to Belvedere to study philosophy. While there, Terry learnt of a training course with the Royal Bank of Ireland. He decided it was just right for him and walked out on his fellows in philosophy and into banking. While working at the Royal's Fibs branch in Dublin, Terry spotted the advertisement. It was in the Irish Independent. Radio Éireann was looking for newsreader announcers. Only those fluent in Gaelic and English need apply. Familiarity with French, Italian, Spanish and German would be to the applicant's advantage. Knowledge of music would be no drawback. And of course, a pleasing voice. He sent off the application and lied about his knowledge of languages. Amazingly, he passed the audition, and while the clerking in the bank continued, he read the news and announced part-time for Irish National Radio. When a full-time position at Radio Éireann was offered to Terry, he had no second thoughts and left the bank to start as a full-time newsreader announcer. After about 2 years at Radio Éireann, Terry started to present light entertainment programmes. It was after sending a copy of this to Mark White at the BBC's Light programme, Terry was offered Midday Spin, a collection of records played by the BBC in London and introduced by Terry on a line from Radio Éireann studios in Dublin. Terry says he now owes more to Mark White than anyone else in British broadcasting, along with Dennis Meehan, his mentor in Ireland. Terry continued to announce for Radio Éireann, and with the advent of Irish TV, he read the news there as well. When Gunnar Rugheimer, an American-Swedish hard man, became controller of programmes Irish TV, Terry became Mr. Friday, and all this long before Chris Evans was ever born. The idea was, every Friday up popped Terry into the sitting rooms of Ireland, introducing programmes and presenting short magazine items between them. Terry says he had no idea what he was doing, and in his own words, it being Irish TV, nobody bothered to tell me. When Gunnar Rugheimer became head of purchase programmes at the BBC, Terry once again featured in his plans. Mr. Rugheimer bought Dallas, and as far as the BBC was concerned, Terry was the reason for the runaway success of Dallas with the British viewing public. It was during his Radio 2 morning show that he made the following observations.
Concerning the apparent fact that, although richer than Croesus, the Ewing family of Dallas had only one telephone in the hall, that they had walk-in wardrobes but only wire coat hangers, that nobody ever touched a morsel of food at breakfast, that there were only about 20 people at the lavish oil baron's ball, that wedding receptions appeared to be held in the driveway by the garage, that characters like Miss Ellie and Digger Barnes kept getting new heads, that every time they sat around the swimming pool there was a wind strong enough to blow a tinker off his missus.
At this time on Irish radio, Terry was breaking new ground with a show involving music and live, unedited, unexpurgated phone calls. Terry a while, and a recording of it, led to Terry being offered a new show by Mark White, Late Night Extra. It was designed to put the BBC's news stations, radios 1 and 2, to bed. Terry was offered Wednesday night, which meant he had to fly over from Dublin on Wednesday lunchtime, back Thursday morning, for the princely sum of £35 per programme. Not a lot after the deduction of airfares, hotels and meals. Late Night Extra had its repercussions though. RTE were unhappy that Terry had chosen to freelance to the BBC. It didn't bother Terry, who resigned from the staff of RTE and says that after marrying his wife Helen and leaving the bank, it was the third best decision of his life. Whilst presenting Late Night Extra, Terry was offered a cover for Jimmy Young, who was taking July 1968 off from his Radio 1 show. Terry's reply, well, has the Pope a balcony? Helen and his son Alan went with him for the month. This was soon followed by the offer of a 6-week contract for the afternoon show shared between Radios 1 and 2. After moving to Britain for that contract, Terry hasn't lived in Ireland since. In the early 70s, Terry received his first invitation to a royal party, and as he recalls, it didn't quite go as smoothly as planned.
Helen and I were invited to Buckingham Palace to meet the royal family. It wasn't all that exclusive. We joined a long queue that wound its way through the doors, into the hall, and up a huge staircase, and suddenly, there they were. Helen went first, curtsying like a good 'un, and then it was my turn. I inclined a suitably loyal head, and the Queen favoured me with a word, "Flab," and laughed. Prince Philip joined in. I smiled weakly and panicked. Helen had already got a drink and was moving into another room. I rushed towards her. "Here," said a regal voice. "Don't forget about us." In my terror, I had walked straight past the Prince of Wales and the Queen Mother. Surprisingly, Her Majesty has kindly asked me to lunch and garden parties since then, and apart from kicking one of the corgis by accident under the table and causing the footman to drop one of Her Majesty's Brussels sprouts, I have behaved impeccably.
His impeccable behaviour meant that in 1997, Terry was awarded the OBE for services to broadcasting, and more recently he was honoured by the University of Limerick when he was conferred with an honorary Doctorate of Letters in January 2004. In 1978, Terry decided to flex his musical muscle, much to the amusement of the British public. The Floral Dance was released. Terry had started the voiceover on his breakfast show, but it was so popular with listeners he released it as a single. And so it was, the Ramblings in the Morning resulted in a top 20 hit. Well, alright, number 21. But it's still quite an achievement. Not satisfied with domination of the music charts, Terry's autobiography, Is It Me?, released in 2000, went straight to number 1 in the bestsellers list. Terry has always been followed by tribes of listeners, or obsessives, wherever he goes. Initially, there were the idiots, I dream incessantly of Terry Society, the Twinkle Toes, Terry Wogan is not kinky like everyone thinks or everyone says, and the Twits. Terry Wogan is top society. Now there's just one, the Togs. Terry's old geezers and gals, whose sole purpose in life, despite trying to fight early senile dementia, is to feature on Wake Up to Wogan, and they write to him daily by email, post, fax and every other method of communication under the sun. The Togs become far more organised and frightening than the Twits ever were. They even have their own anthem. In 1985, Terry's reign on telly started with Wogan, his thrice-weekly talk show, and since then he's presented Auntie's Bloomers, The National Lottery, Wogan's Web, Terry and Gabby, not to mention Blankety Plank prior to all of this. The list goes on. So there we have the life of arguably the most popular presenter ever to appear on British TV and radio. And by whatever name you call him, Terry, Wogs, Dr. Wogan, Togmeister, Dr. Michael Terence Wogan, OBE, the grocer's son from Limerick, has done very well for himself and will surely be rambling on the radio for many years to come.
And there was the band with the curious tone of the cornet, clarinet and big trombone, fiddle, cello, big bass drum, bassoon, flute and euphonium, each one making the most of his chance, all together in a floral dance. All together in the floral dance, dancing here, prancing there, jigging, jogging everywhere, up and down and around the town. Hurrah for the Cornish floral dance!